In 1881, a curator at the British Museum named George Smith held a small clay disc under a gas lamp and went completely still. The disc was catalogued as VAT 7847. It had been excavated from the Royal Library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. It was already 4,000 years old when Smith picked it up. What he was looking at was a map. Not a map of a city, not a map of a trade route, a map of the solar system. And it showed a planet that, according to everything we currently know about astronomy, should not have been visible to anyone without a space telescope. The disk shows our sun at the center, 8 known planets in their correct positions, their sizes in rough proportion, their orbital paths marked with the kind of angular precision that modern astronomers have confirmed is accurate within a few degrees. And then there is a 9th object, larger than Jupiter, on an elongated elliptical orbit that swings it far out into the outer solar system before bringing it back in. NASA announced in 2016 that evidence for exactly this kind of object, a massive planet on a distant elongated orbit, had been detected through its gravitational effect on other bodies in the outer solar system. They called it Planet 9. The Sumerians called it Nibiru. They drew it on a clay disk 4,000 years ago. And the people who have studied that disk most carefully have spent the last 40 years trying to explain it away. If you have never seen this channel before, subscribe right now. What I'm going to show you in the next 15 minutes has been sitting in museum archives since the Victorian era, and the mainstream academic world has never given it a satisfying explanation. Most people watching this will miss what just happened there. The VAT 7847 disk was not found in isolation. It was found in the Library of Ashurbanipal, a royal archive containing over 30,000 clay tablets collected by an Assyrian king in the 7th century BCE. Ashurbanipal did not write these tablets, he collected them. His scribes traveled across Mesopotamia and copied older records onto fresh clay. The originals they were copying dated back to Sumerian civilization 1,000 years before Ashurbanipal, 2,000 years before anyone in Europe could read or write. What this means is important. The astronomical knowledge on VAT 7847 is not Assyrian knowledge, it is Sumerian knowledge, preserved, copied, and passed down through generations of scribes who clearly understood it was too important to lose. The question nobody asks on the surface is, how did they get it in the first place? It is 2400 BCE in the city of Nibiru. The sky is still dark. It is 2 hours before dawn, the optimal window for observation before sunrise drowns the faint objects in the outer sky. A man named Enmen-Durana climbs the external staircase of the ziggurat. He has been doing this for 20 years. His hands are calloused from pressing reed into clay. His eyes are trained to detect angular movements of less than 1 degree against fixed star backgrounds. He carries a tablet, already half full with the previous night's observations. He reaches the top platform and positions himself at the sighting stone. His assistant holds a torch behind him, angled low so it does not affect his night vision. He looks at the position of the outer bodies, and he sees it. Something that does not match his calculations for this night. Something moving against the fixed stars at the wrong angle for any known planet. Something he has seen once before, 3 years ago, just briefly, before it moved back into the outer darkness. He does not panic. He presses his reed into the clay. He records the position, the angle, the brightness, the direction of movement. He writes it down because that is what Sumerian astronomers did. They recorded everything, without exception, first. That tablet, or a copy of a copy of a copy, is what eventually became VAT 7847. The mainstream explanation for Sumerian astronomical knowledge is that they were simply very good observers with very clear skies and centuries of accumulated records. That explanation works for the inner planets. It works for the moon and the sun and the visible stars. It does not work for Nibiru. Here's why. In 1977, Dr. Zecharia Sitchin, a linguist trained at the London School of Economics who had spent decades studying Sumerian cuneiform, published a translation of VAT 7847 and surrounding texts that produced results the academic establishment has been uncomfortable with ever since.
Sitchin's translation identified Nibiru as a specific physical body, not a metaphor, not a religious symbol, a planet on a 3,600-year orbital period, traveling in an elongated ellipse that brings it close to the inner solar system at its perihelion before swinging it back out beyond the orbit of Pluto. The academic response was dismissal. Sitchin's translations were called inaccurate. His conclusions were called speculation. His evidence was called cherry-picked. But here is what the critics did not address. Sitchin was not the only one to notice this. In 1983, a joint project between NASA's Infrared Astronomical Satellite and the Naval Observatory detected what astronomers described as a large, unidentified body in the outer solar system. Dr. Thomas Chester at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was asked about the discovery in a Washington Post interview. He confirmed the detection. He could not explain what the object was. Within 18 months, official discussion of that detection had effectively disappeared from public scientific communication. The detection itself is still in the archived NASA records. Nobody explained where the object went. Stop. Before I go further, you need to understand what that number actually means. 3,600 years. That is the orbital period the Sumerian texts assigned to Nibiru, the time it takes to complete one full journey from the inner solar system out to the far edge and back. In 2016, Dr. Konstantin Batygin and Dr. Michael Brown at the California Institute of Technology published their analysis of orbital anomalies in the Kuiper Belt. 6 trans-Neptunian objects were clustering in a pattern that was statistically impossible without the gravitational influence of a large, unseen body. Their calculated orbital period for this unseen body ranged between 10,000 and 20,000 years, longer than the Sumerian estimate, but consistent with the same basic architecture. A massive planet on a distant, elongated orbit matching the Sumerian description in every structural feature. Think about what that means for a moment. 2 Caltech astronomers in 2016, using data from modern telescopes, arrived at a model that ancient Sumerian scribes described on a clay disk in 2400 BCE. Without telescopes, without computers, without any observational technology that we currently believe would have made this possible. In 1976, a professor at Yale University named William Moran was reviewing translations of a specific category of Sumerian astronomical texts called the Enuma Anu Enlil, a massive compendium of celestial observations and predictions running across more than 70 clay tablets. Most of the Enuma Anu Enlil deals with predictable phenomena: eclipse cycles, planetary stations, lunar phases. Tablet 63 does not deal with predictable phenomena. Tablet 63 describes a body that appears on a cycle too long for any single observer to verify empirically. The text records observations that would have required at minimum 3 to 4 generations of continuous, precise skywatching just to establish the basic orbital pattern. Moran published his analysis in the Journal of Near Eastern Studies. His conclusion was careful but clear. The information in this section appears to predate the observational tradition in which it was preserved. What that means in plain language is this: the Sumerians did not discover this planet by watching the sky over generations. They received this knowledge from somewhere else. Moran did not speculate about where. His paper asked the question and stopped there. It was published in a specialist journal with a circulation of a few hundred academics and has been cited approximately 12 times since the 40 years since. Nobody answered his question. Most people watching this will miss what just happened there. Moran's finding is not fringe research. It is published, peer-reviewed, and sitting in academic archives. The reason it has never entered mainstream discussion is not because it was challenged and disproven. It is because it was never seriously engaged. The question it raises: Where did the Sumerians get knowledge that their own observational tradition cannot account for? Has exactly one answer that the mainstream framework can accept: coincidence or misinterpretation. And exactly one answer that it cannot accept: they were told. The Sumerian texts themselves are explicit about which answer they believed: the Anunnaki. Every serious Sumeriologist knows this word. It appears thousands of times across the cuneiform corpus. The standard translation is the great gods. The standard interpretation is religious mythology. But the Sumerian description of the Anunnaki is not primarily religious. It is operational. They arrive, they perform specific functions, they transmit specific knowledge. They have a point of origin, and in every text that describes their origin, that point of origin is associated with the object the texts call Nibiru. The beings who gave the Sumerians their astronomical knowledge came from the planet whose existence that astronomical knowledge records. The circular logic is uncomfortable. It is also exactly what the texts say. In 1983, the same year NASA's infrared satellite detected the unidentified outer body, a separate team at the Palomar Observatory in California was conducting a systematic survey of slow-moving outer solar system objects. The team was led by Dr. Charles Kowal. In October 1977, Kowal had discovered the first Centaur object, a body called Chiron, orbiting between Saturn and Uranus in an unstable orbit that suggested it had been perturbed into its current position from somewhere further out. Kowal spent the next several years looking for what had perturbed it. His observational logs from 1983 are partially archived at Caltech. In those logs, there are references to 2 observations of a slow-moving object in the outer solar system that could not be matched to any catalogued body. Kowal noted the observations. He noted that a follow-up observation would be needed to establish whether the movement was real or an artifact of the imaging. The follow-up observation was never conducted. Kowal retired, the logs were filed, the unmatched observations sat in the archive. In 2019, a graduate student at the University of Michigan named Rachel Smullen was digitizing old observatory records as part of an archival preservation project. She found Kowal's 1983 logs. She found the 2 unmatched observations. She ran the positions through modern tracking software. The software returned a candidate trajectory. The trajectory was consistent with a large body in the outer solar system on a highly elliptical orbit. Smullen wrote a short note about the finding in an internal university newsletter. She did not publish a paper. When a journalist from Science magazine contacted her the following year, she said she had not pursued it further because, in her words, she was not sure what she was looking at and did not want to make claims she could not support. The candidate trajectory is still in the software's output log. Nobody has published it. What the official record says here is technically true. It is also deliberately incomplete. The official position of the International Astronomical Union on Planet 9 is that it has not been confirmed. The evidence for its existence is gravitational, not visual. No telescope has directly imaged it. This is accurate. What the official position does not mention is that the gravitational evidence is compelling enough that Batygin and Brown at Caltech have staked their professional reputations on its existence, that multiple independent teams have confirmed the Kuiper belt clustering anomalies that demand its presence, and that the orbital parameters derived from those anomalies are consistent with what the Sumerian texts describe, and that NASA's 1983 infrared detection, the one that was confirmed by Dr. Chester at JPL, the one that appeared in the Washington Post, the one that subsequently disappeared from public scientific discussion, was never officially explained or retracted. It was not disproven. It simply stopped being discussed. That is not how science handles false positives. Science handles false positives by publishing the correction, by explaining what the anomalous signal actually was, by closing the loop. The loop was never closed.
There's a second ancient civilization that recorded this object. The Babylonians inherited Sumerian astronomical knowledge and expanded it. Their Babylonian texts, the Mul.Oppen series, compiled around 700 BCE from much older sources, contain a section that describes the orbital mechanics of a body the Babylonians called the planet of the crossing. The crossing refers to the point in the sky where this body's orbit intersects the ecliptic, the axis in which the known planets orbit the Sun. Modern orbital mechanics has a term for this intersection point. It is called the node. The Babylonian texts give the node position for the planet of the crossing with enough precision that Dr. Hermann Hunger at the University of Vienna, one of the world's leading experts on Babylonian astronomy, published a paper in 1999 noting that the described node position was inconsistent with any known planet but consistent with the hypothetical orbital path of a large trans-Neptunian body. Hunger did not use the words Planet 9. He did not reference Sitchin. He simply noted the inconsistency and stated that it merited further investigation. His paper has been cited 4 times in the 25 years since it was published. This is the moment the story changes. Everything before this was the setup. The Sumerians recorded it on a clay disk around 2400 BCE. The Babylonians recorded its orbital crossing point in texts compiled around 700 BCE from older sources. Dr. William Moran at Yale established in 1976 that the knowledge predates the observational tradition that preserved it. Dr. Hermann Hunger at Vienna established in 1999 that the Babylonian node position is consistent with a real trans-Neptunian body. Dr. Batigan and Brown at Caltech in 2016 established that gravitational evidence demands the existence of exactly such a body. 5 independent data points, 4,000 years apart on one end and 8 years ago at the other, all pointing at the same thing. In 2021, a team at the Astronomical Observatory of Belgrade conducted a systematic review of historical astronomical records looking for pre-telescopic observations that might constrain the orbit of Planet 9. They examined Babylonian records, Egyptian star catalogs, Greek astronomical texts, Chinese imperial sky diaries.
They found what they described as consistent references across multiple civilizations to a slow-moving outer body that did not match any known planet. The pattern of references clustered around specific periods that, if the Sumerian 3,600-year orbital cycle is accurate, would correspond to the object's closest approach to the inner solar system. The team published their methodology, but not their full data set. The paper appeared in a Serbian-language astronomy journal with limited international circulation. The lead researcher, Dr. Alexander Tomic, sent a summary of the findings to 3 major international astronomy journals. None published it. 2 did not respond. 1 sent a rejection letter citing insufficient evidence. Tomic told a science blogger in 2022 that he had not abandoned the research, but that securing peer review for findings that touched on ancient astronomical records was, in his words, professionally complicated. Professionally complicated. Think about what those 2 words mean coming from a working astronomer who has spent 3 years on a research program that multiple major journals have declined to engage with. The mainstream version of this ends here. The documented version does not. In 2024, the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile began its Legacy Survey of Space and Time, a 10-year systematic photographic mapping of the entire southern sky. If Planet 9 exists and falls within the survey area, it will almost certainly be detected within the first 5 years. The survey began in 2024. Results are being processed continuously. Nothing has been officially announced. But Dr. Batigan gave an interview to Scientific American in early 2024 in which he said the following. He said that if Planet 9 is not detected by the Vera Rubin survey, the implication is not that it does not exist. The implication is that the gravitational anomalies have a different explanation. And he said that different explanation would be, in his words, significantly more difficult to account for than a 9th planet. He did not say what that different explanation might be. He moved on quickly.
Here is what the documented record has now established. A clay disk catalogued by VAT 7847, excavated from the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, shows a solar system map with a large additional planet on an elongated outer orbit. The knowledge encoded on that disk predates the observational tradition that preserved it, according to a peer-reviewed paper published by Dr. William Moran at Yale University in 1976. NASA's infrared satellite detected an unidentified large outer body in 1983, confirmed publicly by Dr. Thomas Chester at JPL and never officially explained or retracted. The Caltech team of Botteghin and Brown confirmed in 2016 that gravitational evidence demands the existence of a large planet on a distant elliptical orbit, matching the Sumerian description in every structural feature. The disk is in a museum. The 1983 detection is in NASA's archived records. The Caltech paper is published and stands. The Vera Rubin survey is running right now. 4,000 years of documented evidence, from Nippur to the Atacama Desert, from a Sumerian scribe pressing clay in the dark to two Caltech astronomers staring at orbital anomaly data in 2016. All of it pointing at the same object. An object the Sumerians not only knew existed, but claimed to have intimate knowledge of, claimed to have received their knowledge from. The survey is running, the data is being processed, and somewhere in the Vera Rubin Observatory's continuous stream of sky photographs, there may already be an image of the object that a Sumerian astronomer recorded on a clay disk in 2400 BCE. Already captured, already in the data, waiting for someone to recognize it. In the next video, I am going to show you what the Sumerian texts say happens when Nibiru returns to the inner solar system, because the texts do not describe its return as an astronomical event. They describe it as an arrival. And the last time it arrived, according to every ancient record we have, something changed on this planet that we have never fully explained. The data from the Vera Rubin survey is being processed right now.